So this is a second in a little series that I've been doing on the nature of reconciliation, really inspired by the monks that we had here a couple of years ago. Reconciliation leads to peace, to giving up of the struggle. And last week, I talked about the need for reconciliation at all levels, in reconciliation in ourselves, with our friends and families, with our communities, reconciliation in the workplace, in politics, in religion, in economics and culture, reconciliation between nations, and finally reconciliation with the planet, to live our lives in a way that enables us to live in harmony with the environment. I said that reconciliation is the key to creating a peaceful world. Just to reiterate, the word reconciliation comes from the Latin root re, which means back, and conciliare, which means to bring together. So reconciliation means to bring back together. And I said that for reconciliation to take place, for things to be able to come back together again, we need truth and compassion and forgiveness. And Mimi last week added the word trust. And today I want to talk about our personal responsibility around reconciliation, what we can do within ourselves to bring about reconciliation. Because unless we have the capacity for reconciliation within ourselves, then we're not going to bring about reconciliation in the world. And I'm just going to start with that quote that I used from Thich Nhat Hanh last week. He was talking about the Heart Sutra. And he said that the Heart Sutra says there's nothing to attain. We meditate not to attain enlightenment because enlightenment is already within us. We don't have to search anywhere. We don't need a purpose or a goal. We don't practice in order to obtain some high position. In aimlessness, we see that we don't lack anything, that we're already where we want to become. And when we realize that, our striving comes to a halt. We're at peace in the present moment, just seeing the sunlight streaming through the window or hearing the sound of rain. We don't have to run after anything. We can enjoy every moment. People talk about entering nirvana, but we're already there. Aimlessness and nirvana are one. And that's a description, I think, between the reconciliation between ourselves and our lives, giving up the struggle that we all have in life, the struggle we all have with life. We struggle to get physically comfortable. We struggle with our circumstances. We struggle with our friends, with our families. We struggle with what we want to achieve in our lives. We struggle with getting old. We struggle with the idea of death. All those struggles will only stop if we become reconciled with the causes of those struggles. And we have to tell the truth about the causes. We have to have compassion on ourselves and others. We have to forgive. Literally, we have to give back the hurts that we have. And I think it all starts within ourselves. It starts in the innermost part of our lives. And I think if you have a spiritual practice, that's where the work begins. The first thing I think we have to reconcile in our inner work, we have to reconcile our minds with our bodies. The mind and the body have to be reconciled. They have to be brought back together in the stillness of the present moment. The mind has to let go of its wonderful ideas and just be in the body with the breath or with the mantra or whatever focus your spiritual practice is. And the body has to become at peace with itself, not fidgeting to get comfortable, but reconciled to being at peace with itself, even in the discomfort of sitting still. That's the first step of inner reconciliation, the mind and the body coming together and being at peace, that peace that's always at the end of reconciliation. And once the mind and body are at peace, I think it opens up to the second point of reconciliation. And that's the reconciliation. Once your mind and your body at peace, you then have the reconciliation with the present moment. Once the mind and the body are still, then we can fully enter into the present moment. And in fully entering in the present moment, we are reconciled with the present moment. We are brought back to our true home. Again, that thing I used a few weeks ago from Thich Nhat Hanh, who said, our true home is the present moment. To live in the present moment is a miracle. The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment, to appreciate the peace and the beauty that are available now. Peace is all around us in the world and in nature and within us. It's in our bodies and our spirits. Once we learn to touch this peace, we'll be healed and transformed. It's not a matter of faith, it's a matter of practice. We only need to find ways of bringing the body and mind back to the present moment so we can touch what's refreshing, healing, and wondrous. The idea of bringing the mind and body back to the present moment. It's the essence of reconciliation that brings us that. So the second step of inner reconciliation is the reconciliation with our true home. It brings both power and healing, and it opens up the portal to what I think is the third step to inner reconciliation, which is the experience of oneness with all that is. That's the third step to the present moment. Evelyn Underhill describes mysticism as the art of union with reality. The art of, another word for union is yoga, the art of yoga with reality. And, that quote from Bede Griffiths, he says that the goal of all religions are the same. And the goal is the absolute transcendent state, the one reality, the eternal truth that cannot be expressed, cannot be conceived. He says this is the goal not only of all religion, but the goal of all human existence. Whether they like it or not, all men and women are continually attracted by that transcendent truth of the oneness. And the mind, in and beyond every formulation by which it seeks to express its thought, the mind is in search of the absolute. It is made for being, for truth, for reality, and it cannot rest satisfied in any partial truth, in any construction of the human mind. It's always being carried forward to that ultimate truth. And so that reconciliation of the body and the mind and us in the present moment to that ultimate truth is really what we're all seeking. We're seeking that third point of reconciliation. And to enter into this ultimate state is to give up the struggle of discovering the reason and meaning of our lives. It's just to be in that ultimate truth. Jesus expressed that. I mentioned it the last couple of weeks when he says that I am in the Father and you are in me and I am in you. That's the state of oneness with all, with the divine nature, the Father, with all that's out there, all that's within. We practice that level of reconciliation when we meditate. We practice that level of reconciliation when we meditate, when we undertake our spiritual practice. We reconcile ourselves with God and all the universe. And that ultimate truth is the starting point. The starting point because it gives us what Mimi was talking about last week. That starting point gives us trust. Trust that as Julian and Norwich said, in the end, all will be well and all manner of things will be well. And if they're not well, it's not the end. That there's a trust in all that. That with peace at the center, the trust we are held within an order, within an ordered universe, gives us the confidence. That trust gives us the confidence to move outward in love and to give of ourselves with no expectation of return. It allows us to give in a loving way. That Thich Nhat Hanh quote, we meditate not to attain enlightenment because enlightenment is already within us. We don't have to search anywhere. We don't need a purpose or a goal. We don't practice in order to obtain some high position. I find, I'm able to do what I do, to live my life the way that I live it, because I trust that I'm within a consciousness that has much greater wisdom than I could ever have. That consciousness is a loving consciousness that's unfolding towards an ultimate good. And I am able to open to that consciousness within me. And if I can do that, then I can bring love out of whatever circumstances comes my way. I can give with no expectation of return because I'm living in love, and there is no greater expectation than to live in love. There's nothing more than to live in love. So just to recap a bit, we begin by reconciling our minds and our bodies. Then we reconcile ourselves to that portal of the present moment, which opens us up to that reconciliation with ultimate reality. That's the reconciliation that occurs as a part of our spiritual practice, and it's that which can guide our actions in the world. But it is difficult to maintain that level of awareness in our lives when we have to put food on the table and we have to continue dealing with whatever comes our way in life. And yet, we can practice this deep level of reconciliation. And that leads to us coming from a place of reconciliation as we live our daily lives. If we practice that, we can come from that. Because in living our lives, we really mirror what's going on in our practice. Our practice is a mirror of our lives, and our lives are a mirror of our practice. And it begins with the reconciliation of our minds and our bodies in our everyday life. We have to reconcile our minds and our bodies as we go about our day. We like to feel good. Our minds like to feel good. Our bodies like to feel good. But we can't feel good all the time. In his book, Cultivating Awareness, Christian Dillow, who's a Zen master who's coming to the chapel in March, Christian Dillow says, cultivating aliveness is commonly equated with the pursuit of happiness, the desire to feel good, preferably all the time. Who doesn't want that? The reality, however, is different. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations. They come and go, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. What's more, we can only experience pleasantness in contradistinction to neutrality and unpleasantness. So if we want to experience more of the good stuff, paradoxically, we need to welcome more of the bad stuff too. In contrast to the pursuit of happiness being fully alive, it's not about feeling better. It's about feeling better. It's about the better use of our feeling, the more conscious use of our feeling. In other words, we have to reconcile our desire to feel good with the fact that we feel both good and bad. And be willing to accept both and not be enslaved to our desire to feel one thing or another. That's the body and mind becoming reconciled in the reality of the feeling that life brings and the desire to feel good all the time. And linked to that, not only do we want to feel good all the time, not only do we have that, but we also have an attachment to particular outcomes. We want life to go our way. But that doesn't always happen. Somehow, that has to be reconciled, which is why Thich Nhat Hanh talks about aimlessness. In aimlessness, we see that we don't lack anything, that we already are what we want to become, and our striving comes to a halt. We are at peace in the present moment. We don't have to run after anything. This is the reconciliation between what our minds want to happen in life and what actually happens in life. For us to experience the peace that reconciliation brings, those two things have to be brought together. And the way we do that, the way we have that happen, is to give up our attachment to outcomes. The things that we want to have happen in our life. We have to give up the attachment to that and remain in that present moment, which is our true home. So to reconcile ourselves to the feelings that come our way, we have to reconcile ourselves to the circumstances that come our way. That is a mirror of the reconciliation of the stillness of our body-mind during meditation. It's a mirror of that. In meditation, we want to think about nice things. We want to feel good. We have to reconcile all of that. And the same is in our outer life. Our enter into choosing the present moment in meditation is the practice that we really want to have for our lives, to choosing what happens. That's how we prepare ourselves to be agents of reconciliation in the world. By first reconciling ourselves within ourselves, reconciling to our feelings and also to our circumstances. And you can see how that leads to freedom. It leads freedom to be, to love those around us, to give with no expectation of return. Free to experience ultimate aliveness without being enslaved to a set of feelings or circumstances. And we take that into the way that we approach our lives. We become reconciled to our circumstances, to the hand that we've been dealt, because we know that we are part of something that is of infinite wisdom. And we're able to use whatever we have in our hand as a winning hand, even, as I said before, if it's just a pair of fives. That doesn't mean that we give up striving for the best. This is not about giving up. It is about always striving for the best, but not being fazed by the outcomes that happen from our striving. We're striving with no attachment to the outcomes. We do our, it says in the Tao Te Ching, we do our work, then step back. All of which puts us in a place where we can reconcile ourselves to the world around us. We do strive, we do want the best. But whatever comes our way, we say, fine. We're not attached to what that might bring. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. She has but doesn't possess. Acts but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That's why it lasts forever. Again from the Tao. We have to become reconciled in our lives And we have to become reconciled to our deaths. As part of our inner work, we have to reconcile ourselves to our non-existence as well as our existence. And now is the time to do that, rather than that moment that death is bearing down on us like a bus. The moment we start to see that happening, that is not the time. That's the work we have to do now. We have to reconcile ourselves to that now. If we're reconciled to our deaths, then we become, funny enough, if we're reconciled to our deaths, we become reconciled to time. That's an important one to become reconciled to being in the present moment, which is the eternal now that includes both past and future time. In reconciling ourselves to our deaths, we do the profound work that enables us to live in the moment, rather than dreading the ravages of time and our health, of aging. Look at all the work that goes on around aging. To reconcile ourselves to who we are in our lives. To reconcile ourselves to non-existence. Now, I'm not saying that we have to do all this stuff that I'm talking about. But if we're to be truly at peace and reconciled in our lives, and therefore agents of reconciliation for others, then these are the things that we have to be considering. This is the territory. This is the inner territory of reconciliation. This is the roadmap of reconciliation. These are the things we have to be working on in our daily practice. Not to work on yourself in this way is to present yourself to life as damaged goods. We're all damaged goods. But not to be working on that, not to be reconciling ourselves to that, is just to give up to ourselves as being damaged goods that can only go so far as a force for good, a force for transformation. But if you do this work, then you have the opportunity to make a difference and to enable the reconciliation in others. Because you're not acting out of other agendas. The agendas being to feel a certain way or attain something or to be more popular, to see us how others see you one way or another. If you're acting out of those agendas, then you're fundamentally corrupt. That's where corruption is. That's our corruption. Actually, I find this quite interesting that corruption is the opposite, funnily enough, of reconciliation. Corruption is the opposite of reconciliation. And you can try to argue that and work it in your heads and stuff like that, but the way I got to it is the etymology of both the words. The word corrupt comes from the Latin word cor, which means altogether, and rompere, which means to break. So cor, altogether, rompere means to break. So to be corrupt is to break something that was formerly together. It's the opposite of reconciliation, which is to bring something together which was formerly whole. It's absolutely the exact opposite. Reconciliation is to bring something together, reconciliare, to bring something together that was formerly whole. And corruption is to break something that was formerly whole or together. If we have an agenda about our feelings or our circumstances, then we're not free agents of reconciliation. We're corrupted by our agendas. I'm not saying we all have to be pure as the driven snow. I'm just saying these are the things we have to look at and work at. These are the things we have to look at within ourselves in order to free ourselves. So the work that we do on ourselves is what begins our ability to do good in the world. Now, obviously, we're not going to be wandering around like enlightened masters all the time, but the very fact that we're doing this work and aspiring to reconcile ourselves with our lives qualifies us to begin the work with others. It qualifies us to begin the work with others, and this will bring opportunities for reconciliation our way. We just start from where we are, rather than thinking that we have to completely fix ourselves before we can do anything. It's a life's work. In fact, it is the work of life. It is the work of our lives. And as we see the truth of what's within us, as we have compassion on ourselves, as we forgive ourselves, so we become reconciled and realized. So we begin to see the truth that's all around us. And we begin the work of compassion and forgiveness of those around us, so that the world can become more reconciled and realized through the work that we do in it. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that work in the world and the truth next week. But I thought we'd end with a little meditation, if that's okay. Just to get a sense of what I'm talking about. Maybe if you're at home, just sit back on the sofa, put that magazine down, and the cup of coffee, and the phone as well. And just sitting down, maybe with our eyes closed. Just to reconcile our mind to being in our bodies. And choosing to be at peace with our bodies rather than go off on its own and think about lunch or whenever I'm going to finish. Just being at peace in our bodies. Maybe focusing on our breath. Having no other attention but being at peace in our bodies. And so being fully in the present moment. Fully in the present moment, including the noise of the fan. Our bodies being at peace on the chair, not wanting to fidget. Our mind being aware of our bodies, of the sounds, of the feelings around us. And we enter truly into the present moment that includes all of that. And it includes the odd thought we might have, but we let those thoughts go. And entering into that present moment, we enter into the portal of being at one with all that's around us. We are a fundamental part of the interdependence of all things. Experiencing that oneness with the universe in our attention and entering into the present moment. There is nothing else but the present moment. And therefore, in entering the present moment, we're in connection with all things, entire universe. We choose to become a part of it. We choose to be at one. And here our peace begins. Here we become reconciled to our lives, to whatever enters into this present moment, whether we expected it or not. We become at peace with our feelings. We choose what comes our way. That is the nature of enlightenment.